Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Proto and today we're going to be taking a look at a £500 full gaming PC setup build. By that I mean the tower itself as well as the keyboard, mouse, headset, operating system and monitor. And so whilst it includes previous parts that I've mentioned on this channel before, I tend to choose the parts based on the price and whether they're good or feature rich rather than if I've covered it before. So let's get straight into it, starting with the processor. For this we've gone for Team Red, choosing the AMD FX 6300, coming in at £79. This processor has 6 cores running at a speed of 3.5 GHz, making it ideal for games since games are starting to utilise a larger amount of cores. It's also good for other CPU heavy activities such as rendering. I mean, for the price, this is an awesome CPU and will definitely outclass many other Intel ones at this price point. Other than that, there's not really much to say other than in order for me to keep the price down this build, since I am pretty much including everything, I wasn't able to put in an aftermarket cooler. Because of this, you won't be able to overclock the CPU since the stock cooler absolutely sucks at keeping temps low whilst overclocking. So basically, don't overclock the CPU and then when you get some additional cash, buy something like the Cooler Master HAVIT 212 EVO for 25 quid. This in turn will allow you to get a higher FPS in CPU bang games like Battlefield, and you will notice an increase since you can push 4.0 GHz no problem. For the motherboard, we've gone the MSI 970A G43 ATX AM3 Plus motherboard, which comes in at £47. This is basically the same as the Gigabyte one mentioned in my console killer build, except that it's slightly cheaper and has blue accents. This is an ATX board, so it's easy for first timers, so you shouldn't have any problems with how compact things are. And it also has the AM3 Plus socket, so you can upgrade to something like an 8-core 8350, but again, the 6300 will do you well. It also has 4 memory slots supporting up to 2133 MHz and up to 32 GB. The Mobo also supports RAID and a 6 GB per second SATA port, meaning you can connect a ton of SATA devices such as hard drives, DVD readers, etc. It also features USB 3.0 headers, and I want to say that if you're altering this build, you're putting in a side panel or you want to see the components, but you don't like the blue accents, the Gigabyte option is also a good one. Now going into RAM, which is the KINGSTON HyperX Fury Black 8GB 2x4GB DDR3 1866 memory. Now this does cost £36 and it's quite funny how I'm always recommending this in most of my builds, but that's because it has an awesome 1866 MHz speed, whilst also being cheaper than most if not all 1600 MHz kits. Like seriously, follow the link to PC Part Picker and click on RAM. You won't find many other decent ones for this price since they all hover around £40 to £45. And these black heat spreaders do look really sweet too, plus I can vouch for the quality since they got the DDR4 modules for this and it's super f***ing cool. You won't be disappointed and at this price range it's a steal. So next is our storage where we'll keep our OS, games, files and applications. For this I went with the WD Blue 1TB internal hard drive. I could have gone with a 1TB CD8 but I prefer Western Digital in this case, even though it does cost a little more at £40. This is also a 1TB 7200 RPM drive, so speed isn't an issue, neither is capacity. You could always get another hard drive and just add more storage, or get an SSD and use something like the Samsung migration tool. In other words, get this for now and upgrade to an SSD or opt in for more storage is always an option for the future. And now for the killer graphics card, I've gone with the EVGA GeForce GTX 750 Ti 2GB for the win ACX video card, which costs £104. This model is the For the Win edition from EVGA, meaning it has a factory overclock already on it, which can give you better performance in games. If you wanted to, you could change to a different model of this card, but I think this is the best bang for the buck. Like most of the other cards, it has 2GB of GDDR5, which is a good amount for 1080p, which is actually what this card's targeted at, even though games are starting to use more VRAM. It has one of the highest out-of-the-box clocks for a 750 Ti, coming in at 1190 MHz. I just want to point out that it has a TDP or power consumption of 60 watts, which is just awesome. Now this card is also larger than most of the other 750 Ti's, where most of them will be under 200mm in length, yet this one is 241mm. I kinda like that though, since it gives better cooling due to more fans, and looks more badass than the one fan card. Now as for connectivity, it has one DVI-D, one HDMI and one DisplayPort out. This card is a beast, and for the price you're getting a crap ton of performance, as you'll see later in the benchmark. As to be expected though, you will have to turn the settings down a bit for CPU intensive games such as Metal Gear Solid, Assassin's Creed and Battlefield in order to get a good frame rate. But this is down to the CPU and not too much the GPU. Being a decent NVIDIA card, you also get all of NVIDIA's features such as CUDA, PhysX, GPU boost and GeForce Experience, which also has Shadow Play. I just want to quickly talk about Shadow Play as well, since I think it's one of the best softwares for recording your gameplay. Now Shadow Play only works for some of the medium to higher end NVIDIA cards, but it's essentially like any other recording program. The difference being that you can not only record games but also your desktop, as well as having a manual click and record feature, but also shadow mode too. Shadow mode is basically like the Elgato's flashback recording, but you set a specific time frame. For example, I'll select 10 minutes in preferences, and when I press a hotkey, I've recorded the last 10 minutes of gameplay. It's a really sweet tool, and unlike the other alternatives, you'll only see about a 1 to 2 FPS frame drop. Comparing that to OBS, DxStory or Fraps, which will just demolish a decent frame rate. For the case, we've got the Cooler Master K280 mid tower, which costs £30. To go over it briefly, it's a black case which supports up to an ATX board, which is the one we've got, and also supports USB 3.0. There's enough room for 6 3.5-inch drives, as well as one 2.5-inch drive, so more than enough storage upgradability. Now on the outside it has 3 5.25-inch bays, with things like fan controllers and DVD drives, as well as one external 3.5-inch bay, for some memory card controllers, etc. Now this is an awesome case for the money, and I'd highly suggest you get this for a budget build. And here comes the power supply. This is a standard EVGA 500W 80 plus certified ATX power supply, which will set you back £30. Now whilst this PSU isn't modular, it's really reliable and extremely affordable. It also has an output of 500 watts, so it's more than enough for this build. This is really just a budget PSU, and for a build like this, it'll do us just fine. Now for the operating system, I managed to find a Windows 8.1 key for £22. Yeah, sure, you could pirate the OS, but that's not a good idea in general, and it could lead to a lot of security problems too. So just buy the OS, and let's be honest, £20 isn't that much either. I'm not sure whether the promotion is still on, but you may be able to upgrade to Windows 10 for free as well. So just some food for thought. Don't quote me on that though. Now going on to the monitor, we have the BenQ GL2250HM 60Hz 21.5-inch monitor. This is an awesome budget 1080p 60Hz panel, and I just want to point out that it only costs £90 too, which is great value for money, at least for what you're getting. It has a 2 millisecond response time and a refresh rate of 60Hz, meaning that it will display 60 images a second. And whilst this monitor does have built-in speakers, they're pretty crap, which is why we've got a headset as well in this build. In terms of the panel, it is a TN panel, hence the high response time and how inexpensive it is. This does mean that viewing angles are going to be somewhat strict and you won't have the best colour representation. This won't matter for gaming though. Lastly, in terms of connectivity, it has one DVI, one HDMI and one VGA D-sub socket, so enough connection options there as well. Now onto the last part of our build before we get onto the benchmarks, which is the peripherals. Trying to include everything in this £500 build was a bit tricky, but let's kick things off with the mouse and keyboard. For this, I've opted in for the SUMVISION NEMESIS KANE Pro Gaming keyboard and mouse. Both of them are LED backlit, where you have some ability to change the colours. Now whilst the keyboard isn't mechanical, the whole bundle will only set you back £16. I did look at other bundles, and while some of them might look better, it's important to note the form factor of the mouse. This one seems to have the handrest comfortably compared to the Strider, where it just feels hard, cheap, and the button arrangement is somewhat difficult to use. I do believe you can program the buttons, but since I don't own the mouse myself, you might have to ask online. But yeah, this is a really solid bundle. For the mouse mount, we've got the HAVIT HV-MP813 computer mousepad. This is a really nice looking mouse mat and will only cost you £5 too. And from what I've heard and seen, it performs as well as the Razer Goliathus, which is the one I've got, and the SteelSeries lineup. And lastly, we've got the headset. I decided to go with the SUMVISION NEMESIS AKUMA, I think I pronounced that correctly, 7.1 surround sound PC gaming headset, costing us £15. Not only does it fit in with the rest of our setup, but it also has great reviews and looks like a quality piece for the price. Now it does have 40mm speakers and plenty of cushioning, though I do want to point out that it emulates 7.1 surround sound, so obviously don't expect true surround sound from this headset. Saying that, it has a mic input and works through USB, making a lot of things a hell of a lot easier, and it also comes with the control software and control options built right into the cable, so yeah, this is definitely worth it. Finally, here come the benchmarks. This is just based on games running at 1080p as well. Unfortunately, it is difficult to test the ones where the GPU is overclocked, so here are the benchmarks when the card is at stock, though it does overclock like a beast. I also want to say that this card isn't aimed at people trying to max out their games at 1080p, and it works best on medium to high settings, so just bear that in mind. All of these benchmarks, unless specified, will be done on high or ultra. Now Witcher 3 at 1080p gets 20 FPS on ultra, and when you turn it down to around medium or high, it gets 37 FPS. Now a lot of you will be looking at this going, it's pretty crap and unplayable, but just remember how hard this game is to run. Now in GTA 5 at 1080p you'll get 32 FPS on the very high preset, and around 57 FPS when at medium to high. And then we have Far Cry 4, which at 1080p gets 33 FPS on ultra, and 45 FPS on the medium preset. Crysis 3 gets around 35 FPS on the very high preset at 1080p, so I definitely recommend turning the settings down to high or even medium to get a solid frame rate. However, if you don't mind it hovering around 30 FPS and you want to have those pretty pictures, then it's not a bad choice either. So onto Battlefield at 1080p, you'll get around 43 FPS on ultra, and this is playable for sure. I mean, come on, for the price of this card, it's definitely a good buy. Though I do recommend reducing the settings to get the magic 60 FPS. And so that is it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. If you liked this video and found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like. And if you didn't, you guys know what to do. If you have any suggestions for future videos, share them down in the comments below. And as always, everyone, thanks for watching, stay awesome, and this is Proto. Adios!